Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Psalms in Hebrew and Comparative Translations. This morning, we are going to be encountering Psalm 27. So we've been doing this series of Psalms, 24, 25, 26, and 27, that all have to do with this question of who is of worthiness to be in God's presence, that have to do with questions of faith and doubt, that have to do with aspects of feeling a sense of worthiness. I said that already, but that really it is. These psalms all have like an ongoing theme of the question of the speaker's worthiness and of faith and doubt in God. And in some sense, this psalm is the culmination, or the way in which this psalm feels, has all of this material that we've been looking at for the last several classes deeply contained in this psalm. So we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about the structure of the psalm a little bit and the way it's broken up, and we're going to, of course, talk about how we might use this psalm and how we do use this psalm liturgically, how we might use it personally and how we do use it liturgically. And we'll start, as we usually start, with reading the psalm out loud, and in Hebrew and in some translations, and then start with just the question, how does this psalm make us feel? So here we are, Psalm 27. You can follow along with me on the screen or in your packet. LeDavid, Adonai ori v'yishi mimi ira. Adonai ma'oz chayai, mimi efchad. Bikrov alai mireim lechol et bisari, tzarai vo'evai li hema, chashlu v'nafalu. Im tachane alai machane lo yira libi, im takum alai milchama, bizot ani boteach. Achat she'alti me'et Adonai otav akesh. Shivti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai. Lachazot benoam Adonai ulevaker behechalo. Kitz peneni besuko b'yom ra'a yastireni beseter ohalo b'tzur yiromeni. Ve'ata yarum roshi al oivai sevivotai v'ezbecha bo'alo zivchei trua ashira v'azamra l'Adonai. Shema Adonai koli ekra v'choneni v'aneni. Lecha amar libi abakshu fanai et panecha Adonai avakesh. Al taster panecha mimeni al tat be'af avdecha ezrati. Hayita al ticheni val tazveni Elohei ishi. Ki avi v'imi azavuni v'Adonai yasfeni. Horeni Adonai darkecha uncheni ba'orach mishor leman shorai. Al titneni benefesh tzarai ki kamuvi edei sheker v'feach hamas. Lulei hemanti lirot betuv Adonai beretz chayim. Kavei el Adonai chazak v'yametz libecha v'kavei el Adonai. Obviously, you can tell that I've read this psalm before. It flows off the tongue much more readily. And of course, that's because this is the psalm that we read for 50 days in a row from the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Elul all the way through Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeret, which is the 29 days of the month of Elul and 27 or so, 26 days of the month of Tishrei. It's a long stretch of reading this psalm every day, twice a day, morning and evening. And so I know it. I know it almost by heart. I think basically I do know it by heart. We'll read a few translations. Here is the translation of the King James Bible. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise up against me, in this will I be confident. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle he shall hide me. He shall set me up upon a rock. And now shall mine head be lifted up above mine enemies round about me. Therefore will I offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing, yea, I will sing praises unto the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me and answer me. When thou saidst, seek my face, my heart said unto thee, thy face, Lord, will I seek. Hide not thy face far from me. Put not thy servant away in anger. Thou hast been my help. Leave me not, neither forsake me, O God of my salvation. When my father and mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. Teach me thy way, O Lord, and lead me in a plain path because of mine enemies. Deliver me not over into the will of mine enemies, for false witnesses are risen up against me, and such as breathe out cruelty. I had fainted, unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. And we'll read also Rabbi Richard Levy, uh, of David. Adonai is my light and my victory. From whom shall I feel fright? Adonai is the stronghold of my life. From whom should I feel terror? When evildoers approach me in battle to feed on my flesh, my pursuers, my adversaries, they have stumbled, they have fallen down. If a camp encamps against me, my heart will not fear. If a war rises against me, in this I would trust. One thing have I sought from Adonai, how I long for it, that I may live in the house of Adonai all the days of my life, that I may look upon the sweetness of Adonai and spend time in the palace, that you might hide me in your sukkah on a chaotic day, hide me in the hiding places of your tent, raise me high upon a rock. Now my head rises high above my enemies round about, and in your tent I'll offer offerings to the sound of teruah. I shall sing and chant praises to Adonai. Hear, Adonai, my voice. I am crying out. Be gracious to me. Answer me. My heart has said to you, seek my face. I am seeking your face, Adonai. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help. Do not forsake me. Do not abandon me, God of my deliverance. For my father and my mother have abandoned me. Yet Adonai gathers me up. Make your path apparent to me. Guide me in the upright road because of those up ahead who lie in wait for me. Do not hand me over to the lust of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, puffing violently. Had I not the faith that I would see the goodness of God in the land of life? Wait for Adonai. Fill your waiting with hope in Adonai. Let your heart be strong and of good courage, and wait hopefully for Adonai. And I'll read one more translation. This one I didn't put on the sheet because I only received the translation after I made the sheet. The translation here is a translation of done by Professor Benjamin Summer, who was our scholar in residence this past weekend, and is also an expert on Psalms, though he didn't come to speak to us about Psalms. He came to us to speak about Pentateuch. But here's his translation of Psalm 27. Of David, Adonai is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Adonai is the sure haven of my life. Whom could I dread? When evildoers draw near to slander me, my enemies and foes, they're the ones who stumbled and fell. Should an army encamp against me, my mind will know no fear. Should war break out against me, I will trust in this. One thing I asked of Adonai, this do I request, to dwell in Adonai's house all the days of my life, to gaze upon the marvel that is Adonai, and to serve in his palace. For he conceals me, inviolable in his shelter, at times of danger. He hides me in his hidden tent. High on a rock he lifts me up. So now I hold my head high above all my enemies all around. I should offer up in his tent a celebration meal. I should sing and play music to Adonai. Hear, Adonai, my voice, my cry. and show me grace and answer me. On your behalf, my mind speaks. Seek me out. It is you I seek, Adonai. Do not hide yourself from me. Don't thrust your servant away in anger. You are my help. Don't leave me. Don't abandon me, O God of my salvation. Indeed, my father and mother abandoned me, but it is Adonai who takes me in. Parent me, Adonai, teaching me your path, and lead me on a level road while my foes look on. Don't feed me to my enemies. Yes, lying witnesses rise against me with unfair, violent testimony. Were it not for the fact that I believe that I shall see Adonai's goodness while still alive. Hope that Adonai will come. Courage, let your mind be strong, and hope that Adonai will come. So, to start out with the question, what is your emotional feeling on reading this psalm? What do you take away?
Confidence.
Okay, Gary says confidence. Where do you see confidence in the psalm? Whoop, you muted yourself.
At least at the beginning, but a real sense throughout.
Okay, great. So in the beginning, there's a real profound confidence, a confidence in God. Should an army besiege me, my heart would have no fear. Should war beset me, still would I be confident. Right? Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. In Hebrew, bezot ani boteach. I am sure. I am confident in this. I am confident in this. Great. So one of the feelings that we get is confidence. What other emotions do we get from this psalm?
I was hearing just that there's a relationship with God that could take many different forms. One, explaining my relationship. The other is like, I just want to make sure that you can help me in when needed. And then again, just sort of taking the image of confidence and relationship with God.
Okay.
It has all these different forms of relationship.
Mishka says relationship with God is complicated. Sometimes it's confident, other times it's other things. Does anybody have a feeling of what other things the psalm, what other emotions are part of this relationship that Mishka is talking about? Larry.
You get the sense the world is giving him a lot of trouble. And despite that, if you look at 13, had I not faith that I would see the goodness of God in the land of life, and then there's an ellipsis, the three dots. It's almost like you hear oy vey at that point.
Yeah. I a lot of the translations translate that verse with an ellipse. Like there's, had I not the assurance that I would enjoy God's goodness in the land of the living, like there's a sense, right, that if I didn't believe that, I'd be completely lost, right? The end of that sentence, whether it's feeling that of giving up, or a feeling of self-harm, or right, whatever the end of that sentence might be, it sort of feels to many of the translators like that is a train of thought that the psalmist cuts off, before I can go down that road too much. I'm going to tell myself, nope, look to God, be strong and of good courage, right? I'm going to have hope. I can't pursue all of that trouble too much. Otherwise, it will overwhelm me. It will be beyond me. And there's definitely that in the psalm. Good. So kind of
To finish that thought, he then is, now the grammar changes. Now he's speaking to other people like himself.
Great. All right, good. So we notice in this psalm changes of tense. Specifically, who is the psalmist speaking to? Or and maybe this could go to its original liturgical use. So we talk about liturgical use in the sense of how we use the psalm. But Dr. Summers essay that he sent me after our Scholar in Residence weekend about this psalm, his research is on original liturgical uses. How were these psalms used in the sacred, in the temple in Jerusalem? Right now, a lot has been written, and I don't want to go into it too much, but a lot has been written about the fact that if you go to other ancient Near Eastern legal material about how to perform sacrifices, interspersed with that legal material are incantations, psalms, what would be called psalms if they were in our Tanakh, right? Like prayers. That is to say, the other texts that are from the time of the Torah, other Mesopotamian and ancient Near Eastern material that has to do with, okay, how do you perform the rites, the sacrifices, the sacrificial rites in the temples to the gods? Those texts have, and then you should walk 3 times, widdershins around the altar, and then you should say these words, and then you should put the animal on the altar and sacrifice it, and then you should say these words, and then you should collect the blood and sprinkle it, and then you should say these words, and our text doesn't have any of that almost at all anywhere. And a lot has been written about the sanctuary of silence. Was the priestly understanding of the sacrificial system like a completely silent one? Was the worship of the one God different from worship of gods because there weren't any prayers, because there weren't any incantations, because there wasn't any magic, because there wasn't any words to accompany the actions? And biblical scholars disagree about this, but one possible answer to the question is that our book of Psalms, our Psalter, or at least some parts of it, were meant to be used in conjunction with the sacrificial system. And so that we actually do have a record of what was said in the temple if we are careful about how we reconstruct that those moments. And so this psalm is a good example of that, because it might have been used liturgically in the temple. I'm about to lay out how that might be. The style of this psalm suggests that maybe it wasn't just one speaker, but maybe 2 speakers or multiple speakers, and that that it was actually used liturgically for a particular reason. A supplicant, a worshiper, might have come to the temple for a particular reason with a sacrifice, and because they shared that reason with the priest said, "Oh, this is a perfect prayer for you to use for this reason, and it's actually a call and response prayer. I say this part, you say this part. We say this together." Okay, so maybe it is, and I don't know, and how we use it liturgically is not that way, but maybe we should be thinking about how to use Psalms liturgically, not just in our individual prayer, but in conjunction with a person who is giving pastoral care. Certainly, I use this psalm when I visit people in the hospital, because I think this psalm speaks to real distress. So let's go through it quickly. The psalm divides itself up into sections. The first 6 verses have supreme confidence. The worshiper is super confident. But in verse 7, all of a sudden the tone shifts. Hear, O eternal one, when I cry out loud, have mercy on me, answer me. That is not the sound of a confident person. That person is in extreme distress and does not feel that God is answering him. So, and then finally, in the third section, which is 13 and 14, there's an expression of hope, along with sort of an understanding that certainty, the certainty of the first 6 verses, certainty in salvation, certainty in God's presence, certainty in enjoying God's goodness in the land of the living, certainty is not guaranteed, right? The end is hopeful, but it is not certain. And so there is this shift in mood, and that shift in mood comes, as Larry pointed out, with a shift in grammar. The first 6 verses are in the third person, right? We're talking about God. It is still a first person narrative, but it is not addressed to God. It is about God. But starting in verse 7 and verses 7 through 12 are very much a direct address of God. And then in verses 13 and 14, we return again to the third person, where there's a clear movement here, that the psalm is moving back and forth between confidence and need, between worry about God's absence and belief in God's reliability and constant presence. And so there's a tension within the psalm about what it means to feel, like Mishka said, this relationship with God. It takes many forms, and sometimes it's confident, and sometimes it's plagued by doubt. And the thrust of the poem, the end, is, well, maybe we can't be certain, but we can have hope. Thoughts, reactions. Yeah, Larry.
It almost seems like that's the message of the psalm, is that do not put your confidence in certainty. That in the uncertainty of life, there's one thing you can be sure of, and that is hope, which itself is not certain. Because if it were, then where's faith? It's almost a lesson in faith, like in Hebrews. It's faith is the evidence of things to come. It's the hope.
Right.
And this seems to be the saying what you should be feeling is not absolute certainty, not literalism, not this hard-headed literal translation of things, but I'm confident in God, even though there is uncertainty here in the world. And I'm comfortable with my uncertainty because I have hope.
Nice. So, in your spiritual practice, in your life, do you find moments of certainty, moments of doubt, moments of distress, moments of crying out, moments of hope?
All of those.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of them. I think about them.
Yeah. Do other folks experience that range of emotional responses to your relationship with the divine? Murray.
Well, I agree with Larry about it overall, but I'm troubled to some point that one of the passages, I don't know whether it's the waning of confidence or whether it's a regal expression that says, don't hide your face from me. Is it really lack of confidence, or is it the monarch here saying, hey, I have expressed all my confidence in you. I'm the paragon of confidence. So don't hide your face from me. Don't embarrass me. Don't let me down. I mean, I don't know which is the emotion here.
Nice. So there's a way in which these things are not completely separate. The doubt actually perhaps comes from that faith, that supreme confidence, right? I've been telling people my whole life that you're there for me, God. So now please show up. You know, when I'm in distress, I really need you. I want to be able to say to people, see, I was in distress and God came just like I said God would. I spent all of those years saying, God's got my back. God's lifting me up. God is my stronghold. When there's a war, I'm not worried. God's there. Now that I'm in distress, hold, you know, just like I stayed faithful to you, please stay faithful to me. Don't turn your back on me. Show me your face, right? So I think you're right, Maria. I think there is some like both emotional and sort of narrative arc connection between these two. It's not two completely separate versions of a person. This is the same person speaking. It's not like it's two different psalms. The same person maybe is expressing both confidence and doubt. And we in our lives experience both confidence and doubt. And we, you know, and sometimes the greatest doubts are because we had the greatest confidence. And so I think that's right. The right when another way to sort of respond to what you're saying, Marie, is through the language, the words of the psalm itself in Hebrew, right? In the beginning, the psalmist says, Yastireni beseter o hello. You have hidden me in your secret tent, right? You hide me. You take care of me. Okay? And then the doubt is the same word. Al taster panecha mimeni. Don't hide your face from me. And so the use of the word samech taf resh, the use of that Hebrew root comes in both the confidence section and the doubt section, which shows that this is composed in some sense as a unity. Some folks have said maybe it's two separate psalms because the emotional difference between them is so profound. But I actually think that doing that misses maybe the very important religious point that a single person can both be doubting and confident in different points of their life, and even in the same moment.
Yes.
Even in the moment of the time it takes to say this psalm. Great. Let's look at some of our liturgical connections. And then I know Linda wanted to talk specifically about the phrase Ki avivi mi azavuni. Indeed, my father and mother abandoned me. And what does that mean in the context of this psalm? So we'll look at that too. So I already said that Psalm 27 is recited in full in our morning and evening services from the first day of Elul through Shmini Atzeret. That's the season of repentance. That we often describe this as the psalm for the season of repentance. And we recite it during that time period twice daily, which is a lot. It is a lot of reciting of this song. So I brought a few much more minor uses of the psalm. For example, verse 7 is paraphrased or referenced in two very familiar Zemirot songs that we sing on Shabbat in praise of Shabbat. At Deror Yikra and Ki Shemara Shabbat. So in the third stanza of Deror Yikra, which was written in Morocco in the 10th century, it says Shema Koli Biyom Ekra. That is a restatement of verse 7. Right? Verse 7 says Shema Adonai Koli Ekra. It's a plea. Please hear me when I call. Right? Hear, O Eternal One, when I cry aloud. So the use of it in this song, right, is a way of saying on Shabbat there's a special emphasis that God hears prayers on Shabbat. And so there's this God is going to listen to your prayer. Hear my voice on the day, meaning on the day Shabbat, that I call. Also in Ki Shemara Shabbat, there's this verse that says, I shall pray to God the evening and the morning prayers and the Musaf prayers and the Mincha prayers, and God will answer me. Hu ya'aneni, which is a direct reference to that same verse. Shema Adonai koli ekra v'aneni v'choneni v'aneni. Have mercy on me and answer me. But here it's said with more confidence. In the original psalm, it's a prayer, it's a hope, and here it's sort of quoted out of context a little bit, right? God will answer me. God will definitely answer me on Shabbat because I'm doing all the right things. I'm observing Shabbat in the right way. Verse 7, of course, is also rewritten in plural and used in our Slichot prayers on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Shema Adonai Kolenu Nikra Chonenu Va'anenu, right? So this is right, instead of saying hear my voice when I call out, have mercy on me and answer me, it changes the whole thing to the plural. Answer us when we cry out, have mercy on us, answer us, and that's used in our Slichot prayers. Also, verse 9 is quoted. That's the verse, Al taster panecha mimeni, do not hide your face from us, is quoted in the special Amidah prayer for fast days. That's the minor fast days, like Tanit Esther, the fast of Esther, or Asara B'Tevet, the fast of the 10th of Tevet, right? There are several minor fast days over the course of the year, and we add in a special prayer to our Amidah, to our standing prayer, our most important set of prayers. Answer us, Lord, answer us on this fast day, for we are in great distress. Look not at our wickedness, do not hide your face from us, and do not ignore our plea. Be near to our cry, let your loving kindness comfort us. Even before we call to you, answer us, as it is said, before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear, which is a quote from Isaiah. For you, Lord, are the one who answers in times of distress, redeems and rescues in all times of trouble and anguish. Blessed are you, Lord, who answers in time of distress. So we quote from Psalm 27 in the context of the fast days. All right, let's talk about some interpretations of this psalm. In the Midrash to Psalms, it suggests that Adonai Ori, that God is my light, refers to Rosh Hashanah, the new year, the day of judgment, which is the day on which God brings forth judgment as bright as noontime. It's also, right, that Rosh Hashanah is the creation of the world, which is associated with light. While Yishi, right, Adonai Yishi, God is my light and my salvation, or my victory, that refers to Yom Kippur, when God brings us salvation over our sins. So that's one of the reasons why this psalm is used on throughout the whole month which precedes Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is that there's a very ancient tradition that the verse is actually referring to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And this goes to one of the ways that maybe this psalm was used in the temple. Like maybe this psalm was used already in ancient Israelite times in connection with the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? There's a reason why the Midrash to Psalms has this association. I read this whole book in preparation for this class called Opening Your Heart with Psalm 27, A Spiritual Practice for the Jewish New Year by Rabbi Deborah Robbins, which I recommend as a spiritual practice for the month of Elul. It's like something you can read every day leading up to Rosh Hashanah. That is a quote from Psalm 27 and some explanation of it. And here she says, it's a puzzle on the page each morning. Dots dance around the Hebrew letters. Their energy attracts my attention. Lule means had I not. That's the verse, the first word of verse 13, the end of the psalm. Lule, the Hebrew letters spell out the internal spiritual and emotional work I have to do. I rearrange the Hebrew letters to Elul, right? The same letters, Lamed Vav, Lamed Aleph, or Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, right? That is also the name of the month that we recite this psalm in. Elul, this month when my life is full of doubt, questions, regret. The letters of Lule, Elul spell out significant choices. Lule spells my regret, despair, and doubt. Elul spells the possibility of repair, apology, hope, and faith. So she says that it's not an accident that we're reading this psalm during this month. Like even encoded in the the words of the psalm itself is a reference to this month. And Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is a time where we try to look at our life with humility and doubt, where we regret our past bad actions and commit to a life of faith going forward. And that is, in some sense, right, over a message of one of the messages of this psalm. In the Talmud says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, it was taught in the Tosefta, why do dots appear over the word lule, as if there are some reservations? And in many, in the Masoretic text, the word lule has all these dots above it. Because David said to the Holy Blessed One, Master of the universe, I have every confidence in you that you grant an excellent reward to the righteous in the world to come, since God's ultimate goodness is manifest in the land of eternal life. But I still harbor uncertainty with regard to myself. I do not know whether I definitely have a portion among them, right? So this goes to the thing that we've been talking about in Psalms 24 and 25 and 26. The speaker, let's say it's David, is not sure if he measures up to the last week we talked about, well, if you're going to judge me with a pack of wicked people. Don't judge me with the really righteous, right? Because I don't think I measure up to the righteous. And a few weeks before, we talked about that the psalm that really taught that what is a person who deserves to stand in the presence of God, who deserves to be in God's holy place. That's a person with clear eyes, a pure heart, right? The person who hasn't said anything untrue in their whole life, a person of true integrity. And we've been watching how David really struggles with his own integrity, where the psalmist isn't sure. Yes, I said what I meant, but then I did something else. Are you going to judge me based on my actions or based on my intent? Right? And here again, right, this question, this goes to Larry's point about the ellipsis at the end of verse 13, right? maybe what it's the ellipsis is saying, God, I get that if I'm really righteous, you'll reward me after I'm dead. But what about in this world? Is there a reward? Is there goodness in the world that of life? Is it, if I do everything right, is my life going to go okay? Because it doesn't really seem that way. I'm still struggling here, right? Like my body is falling apart. My I need to get this surgery for my hip. You know, my children aren't talking to me, right? Like there's life is so fraught. And it doesn't always feel like we get goodness in the land of the living, even if we're doing it all right. And so David, who isn't doing it all right all the time, right? He's sinned, he's made mistakes. How much more so can he say, I don't know if I'm really gonna, I have doubt. So Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb says, David's searching for meaning and purpose. He wants opportunities for prayer and meditation. He says, one thing I ask of the Lord, this only I seek. And he says, Achat sha'alti meit Adonai ota avakesh. What is the difference between the word to ask and to seek? Seems like maybe are these words synonyms, or do they have different shades of meaning? And he points out that same pair of words is used in the book of Esther, which we're going to read on the holiday of Purim in just 6 weeks. What is your wish? The king says, Ma she'elatech Esther halmaka uma bakashatech od vateas. Right? What is your wish? What do you ask for? And what is your request? What do you seek? Right? And Esther replies, She'elati uvakashtati, my wish and my request, or what I am asking for and what I'm seeking. And so this Rabbi Abishutz says that she'elah is a request for something transient, and a bakasha is a request for something enduring or eternal. And Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb says David's two requests are in some sense one and the same. If one sojourns in this world's house of God, one experiences a foretaste of the world to come here and now, right? David is asking, the reason why David uses both she'elah and bakasha is because David is asking for both goodness in the land of the living and eternal life. And hopefully that goodness in the land of the living is a reflection of the eternal life. Live in God's house on earth, and you're already gazing on the beauty of the Lord. You've already made it. So maybe that's. I really loved this interpretation. Rabbi Deborah Robbins notes that the word chayai, which is in the first verse, ma'oz chayai, the stronghold of my life. Chai means life. Chayai means my life. And she says, Chayai has two yuds. Two yuds is one of God's names. Yud. It's a shortened version of God's name. And so she says, it is impossible to spell my life without God's name. And so she's like, yeah, look, even in this word chayai, which means my life, and this psalm is all about what it means to be in relationship with God in life, in the land of the living, as it says at the very end. So you can't have my life without a relationship to God, right? The psalmist is saying, or Hebrew itself maybe is encoding this idea that life is lived in relationship with God. And then she also invites us to think about all of the different names for God that is used by the psalmist in this poem. All right, so I did want to come back to Linda's question about the Ki avivi mi azavuni varonai yasfeni. So what do you did anybody else find that verse was troubling? That why would David impugn his own parents in this way, or why would the psalmist feel that? Did anybody else feel concerned or upset about that line? Larry. No, you're muted.
Me?
Nope, Larry is.
Yeah, it's sort of clinging to human values seems to be what that is. Though your mother and father may reject you because of you're not following some traditional path. That God is my judge and is looking at me. That I'm not looking to human values or familial constraints. My community. While it's important, God is the voice I listen to, and God will show me.
All right, so good. So I think that is one reading of the verse, and I think it's a fairly common one. That is to say, the psalmist is saying, I don't need your super ego. I don't need your parents and society telling me what to think. I have a relationship with God that's my personal relationship with God. Now, I don't think that is. I think that's a very American uh Protestant reading of the verse. I don't think that's the only possibility. I don't think that it's out of the contextual realm of this psalm. I think that it's a legitimate interpretation. I'm not trying to say that it isn't. I think that what he's talking about here is the death of his parents.
That's what I was thinking of too.
I think he is saying, I think this is a like we've been talking about. These are psalms that reflect a David that is an older David. I think when he says, "My parents have forsaken me," he doesn't mean the event of an actual parent disavowing a child. Like maybe that also happens to some people in life, and we certainly hope that it doesn't happen regularly. But I think we all of us who live to a certain age experience the death of our parents, and certainly we hope that we experience that rather than that our parents experience the death of us. Right? That we prefer the things to flow in their natural order. And I know that there are people in this room who have lost children, and it's heartbreaking to think about. And I think what the psalmist is saying here is that when I lose my parents from old age, from their death, God is still there with me.
God is eternal.
Yeah, that's what I think is going on. And also, like, maybe this psalm is used when experiencing the death of a parent, right? Maybe this psalm, like maybe the distress that the psalmist has, the distress of, right? Like the psalmist is confident, and then a parent dies. And all of a sudden, there is a lack of confidence. God, don't turn your face from me. Don't hide from me. When my parents are gone, but please, God, don't be gone. Also,
Yeah.
I think that's, to me, that, and also that is what Ibn Ezra says this verse means. So I'm relying on a commentator. I didn't come up with that myself. The commentator Abraham Ibn Ezra says, "Ki avivi mi azavuni" means that this is referring to the death of a parent. Does that work for you, Linda, in terms of like redeeming it a little bit, like that David is not impugning the parenting of his own, his parents didn't forsake him except in dying.
Yep.
Yeah. Murray.
On another subject, verse 4, I'm curious the translation of the word bait, to be house rather than home. House has a little bit how shall I say, a colder, it's an edifice, a building, a colder connotation to me, home, with the emotion and the true welcome of a person, is a warmer and embracing place.
Mhm.
Yet the translators of the word bevet use it instead of the home of the Lord and the house of the Lord. Is there any
Yeah, I mean,
discussion?
I think it's because the phrase Beit Adonai refers to a specific house. That is the temple. That is to say, I think for the psalmist and for the translators who are trying to do their best to translate, like gazing upon God's beauty in the house of God specifically refers to ascending to Jerusalem to perform that sacrificial rite in in Jerusalem. So I think the phrase in the context is referring to a specific house. That I think that's why it's translated that way, as opposed to translate the word bayit, which means house, in a more in home. I also think that the R association in English between the word house and the word home doesn't necessarily isn't necessarily present in the Hebrew bayit, which means both house and home. And so like when the reader in Hebrew sees Beit Adonai, I don't think they are thinking about it with that same emotional connotation that we have in our English. Yeah, Lisa.
How did you know I was going to say something?
You unmuted, then you remuted.
Um, I was just thinking, well, to go back to your comment about parents dying, and then the comment about don't turn your face away from me, and it made me think about how scary it is when both parents are gone.
Yeah, you're an
And the idea of losing a connection with God too, like the last grown up, in our lives. So I just related to, for me, it brought up a feeling of fear, and the reality, that tomorrow's not promised, how fragile life is, and, just what it feels like to be at that stage of life. It can be scary. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Larry.
One other thought on parents forsaking you, thinking about David and David's parents. The most significant thing about David's parents is Jesse did not propose him to Samuel as one of the alternatives. He's just off with the sheep. He was the last and reluctantly presented by his father to Samuel, almost as if he was embarrassed about him. He's not what you're thinking.
Yeah,
to
he's a musician, not a warrior. He plays the flute and the harp. He watches the sheep. He's not one of my stronger sons. He's a poet. He does his own thing. He beats to his own drum. You don't really want to look at him. Yeah, I do think that there is something to that in the narrative.
Yeah. God chooses whom God will choose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be held back by your parents or your tradition or community or family or whatever.
Yeah. So Benjamin Summer suggests that this psalm was specifically used by an asylum seeker. So he says the references to unjust accusations, the speaker wishes to remain in God's temple permanently. These elements have led several scholars to suggest that the psalm functioned as a prayer of a person seeking asylum in the temple. In ancient Israel, the altar at the temple was a place of safe refuge for a person accused unjustly of a crime. When a person in ancient Near Eastern cultures was killed, relatives of the deceased had the right, and some people felt the obligation, to kill the relative's killer. But Exodus says that a person who commits accidental homicide could receive refuge in the local temple, and that is also followed up with the with a story in 1 Kings where Adoniah actually gets refuge by holding on to the he receives some kind of amnesty. It's easy to see how Psalm 27 might be especially meaningful for such an asylum seeker. The people accusing him are false witnesses and unjust accusers. They are committing slander against him, and they want to eat his flesh, right? They want to want to actually to kill him, and so he hopes to dwell in the temple, to have a job there as a member of its staff, to maybe to receive a kind of asylum in the temple. Maybe indeed this psalm was used in that way, but it doesn't mean that that's the only use of that psalm. For the asylum seeker, the reference to serving in an official capacity may have been literal, but for other folks, the references to the safe haven of the temple functions might be just a metaphor about religious life. So I think that's really interesting, and I wouldn't have known that without having read this essay from Dr. Summer, where he's really providing a deep academic analysis of how this psalm might be used. Then he talks a little bit about the faith and the doubt, and with this we'll conclude. A striking element of Psalm 27 is its movement from confidence to need, from believing in God's reliability to worrying about God's absence. How can we account for the stark contrast between the first stanza, in which the worshiper joyously proclaims trust in God, and the second and third stanzas, in which the worshiper betrays the fear that God might be far off? So one answer that he gives is, okay, the movement from faith to doubt demands our attention because the direction of the journey on which this psalm leads us is the opposite of what many readers might have expected from a religious text. Our worshiper does not grow into a more conventional piety over the course of the psalm, casting aside doubts to take up the armor of faith. Rather, the worshiper sets aside a seemingly ideal faith to take on a more realistic one. The faith of the first section seems at first to be stronger. The truth is that the worshiper speaks of God in the third person as something that he knows about, but not as someone whom he knows. In the second stanza, when the worshiper moves to second person in order to address God directly, the worshiper at last achieves the experiential contact with God that he yearned for in verse 4. It is precisely when the worshiper speaks directly to God that doubt becomes prominent. God is no longer something the worshiper claims to know all about. Now God is a partner in a relationship, and relationships are slippery and unknowable in a way that does not conform to the simplistic faith of the first stanza. The direction of the Psalms movement is crucial because it models the maturing of an authentic relationship to God. A simple faith that asks no question and admits no anxieties is not the most religious faith. A relationship that can articulate anxiety about the beloved's distance is ultimately stronger. The psalm tells us that unpleasant emotions are not to be repressed as untoward, but are to be healed through models that show how to handle them. Here, the psalmist gives permission to his audience to be emotionally conflicted in relation to God. He does not urge his hearers to grin and bear it or to put on a happy face, and he does not disparage honest fear of God abandonment. A faith that allows no doubt is hubris. When it claims to know for sure what God will and will not do, it denies God's freedom and invests far too much in the believer's impregnable security. Such a faith is the very opposite of true piety. The wavering faith of Psalm 27 is more honest, more humble, and therefore more deeply religious. This faith is neither Pollyannish nor naive. It is realistic about the fact that God seems absent at times. It is also quintessentially Jewish, in ending neither with fear nor with complete confidence, but with hope. The final verse of Psalm 27 recalls the Pentateuch, which does not conclude with entry into the land of Israel and fulfillment of God's promises. Deuteronomy 34 narrates not the victory of the hero, Moses, but his death. But that chapter also leaves us with the expectation that God's promises to Moses and to the patriarchs before him will nevertheless come to fruition in coming years, with the victory of Moses' assistant Joshua. Moses' life was not a success because he completed his task, but because he did not desist from it. That is, because he lived up to the teaching of his latter-day disciple, Rabbi Tarfon, where Rabbi Tarfon said, "Lo alecha amlacha ligmor," right? It's not incumbent upon you to complete the task, but neither are you free to desist from it. It is significant for the nature of the Jewish religion that the Torah ends on a note of hope rather than fulfillment. That tendency made it natural that the anthem of the Zionist movement and later of the state of Israel is Hatikva, the hope, rather than a song with a title like Hanitzachon, the victory. Hope, rather than perfect confidence, characterizes the most mature Jewish faith, a readiness to admit one's fears, to look toward God expectantly while renouncing the claim to predict all God's actions. This faith is well displayed by Psalm 27's journey from simple, trusting piety in its first stanza through doubt in its second to hope in its third.
Amen.
They're good guides for relations among humans as well.
Yeah, that's right. Real relationship is not it's not Pollyannish. You can't just have perfect faith. You have to be able to express doubt. And a relationship is stronger because of that. So I just want to thank everybody and remind everybody that we are not meeting next week. Next week is February break, and I will be visiting my grandmother in St. Louis. But we will meet in 2 weeks on the 27th of February.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashikoch.
Yeah, travel safely.